lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy. This time I'm reviewing Loki Where Mischief Lies by Mackenzi Lee. This is a young adult historical novel centering around Loki from the Marvel Comics and Cinematic Universe. He's also based off the Norse mythology of the trickster god. So, Loki is this character who is usually a villain and does things that are quite tricky, and so usually Loki is a villain and not somebody to be trusted, but also sometimes Loki comes out on the good side and helps the good guys whenever it basically benefits him best. And this novel is centering around what would be Loki's teenage years, as he's figuring out who he wants to be and whether or not he's going to be the good guy or the bad guy. He has all these expectations being put on him and all these stories that he's hearing and basically prophecies about how he's going to turn out to be a villain, and Loki hasn't quite decided yet. So this is his journey into deciding the path he is going to take. Because Loki is basically an alien from another planet, his lifespan is a lot longer, so he's already lived for a couple hundred to maybe a couple thousand years, I don't quite remember, but Asgardians live much longer than humans, so this is not technically like at certain teenage years, but like developmentally is the human equivalent of a teenager. Anyway, the book starts off on Asgard, on his home planet where he's been raised. He has a brother, Thor, who's roughly his same age, and the two of them are both being raised as if they could take over and inherit the throne and rule Asgard from their father, Odin. However, Odin is much more of a warrior king, and he values strength and fighting, and that is something that Thor excels at, and something Loki doesn't. And the thing Loki is good at, which is magic, is discouraged. Odin doesn't trust it. He doesn't really trust Loki. And so Loki is trying to earn his good graces, but also feeling like he's always failing to do so. So Loki not only feels like an outsider in his own family, like he doesn't quite belong, he also feels like an outsider to the rest of Asgardian society and to the court. A lot of them are just focused on fighting and building a strong army, which is important and valuable, but doesn't quite fit in with Loki's skills. He doesn't quite socialize as well. He's more withdrawn. He's the kind of person who will just like sit back and watch things unfold and then be super clever and everything. Like, he values his brains, and his mother Frigga also values magic and like that intelligence, and so he gets along with her, but otherwise he doesn't have a lot of friends until he meets Amora, who is also magic skilled. She's actually training to be the court sorceress. So like, Odin has one magical person that he trusts, and Amora is training under the current one to become the sorceress and advisor to whoever is king next, either Thor or Loki. And Loki and Amora immediately connect, both over their love of magic and being able to do these cool things, but also they feel a bit left out. They both have this darker side. They see the world differently. But they also get into a lot of trouble together, and they have one antic in particular that goes spectacularly wrong, where they destroy this Asgardian artifact, and Amora takes the fall for it, so she gets banished to Earth, where magic doesn't come easily, and where she will slowly basically die. Something about Earth's basic physiology does not agree with Asgardians. And so we have a couple of years where Loki is just feeling isolated and by himself. Kind of flash forward. And Loki is given this assignment to gain Odin's trust, and he's to go to Earth, or what they call Midgard, and investigate these very mysterious deaths that look like they could be magic. They're not something humans would be able to do to each other. So Loki goes to investigate kind of against his will. It's not something he's particularly interested in, but he's not really given a choice. He's done something else to get himself in trouble, and this is his punishment and payment. So Loki is just basically sent onto Earth, told to find this society that is already investigating these, that are working for Odin, the Society of Humans, and help them find out who's actually causing it. But he also can't use a lot of his magic on Earth because it gets used up so quickly and doesn't replenish, so he has to also be careful about how he's using his powers. And so it's a lot of Loki's brains and how well he can figure everything out. Loki is a character who doesn't trust people easily. He's naturally suspicious. he's not making friends on Asgard, and he definitely doesn't make friends easily when he's on Earth either. The group he's supposed to meet, the Sharp Society, they immediately get off on the wrong foot, and it takes a while for them to kind of gain an uneasy truce, where they don't quite trust him anyway, because he is Loki, and he's living up to all these Norse myths that have been circulating for centuries on Earth. But they're things that Loki hasn't done. They're things he hasn't done yet. He doesn't remember them, but they all paint him out to be the villain and the bad guy. And so Loki also has this added expectation that he's going to betray everybody, that he's going to be the bad guy. So even when he hasn't decided yet, he feels like the people of Earth kind of expect him to anyway. So there's, like I said, a lot of Loki dealing with expectations of who he's supposed to be as a ruler, who he's supposed to be as a guardian, as a person, what his friends want, what Amora wants him to be, what the Earthlings expect him to be, and really just what he expects of himself also. So this book is historical fiction. When Loki gets sent to Earth, it's actually in Victorian London, so we get all that foggy atmosphere. It's a couple of years, or right after the Jack the Ripper murders, they're referenced in here. You get London with those like dirty, dodgy streets. Very atmospheric, very much it feels like Sherlock Holmes kind of. That setting, I love getting to see not only Asgard and more of Asgardian culture than we get to see in the comics and the movies, but also I enjoy getting to see Victorian Earth and how Loki's seen. And this Sharp Society that he's sent to is especially keen on studying Norse mythology. They've met or been in communication with Odin, so like they kind of know there's a connection between Asgard and the Norse mythology and these people, and so they have definitely devoted themselves to studying that. So I love seeing the Norse mythology and the Asgardian culture compared. So Loki as a character is somebody who is still figuring out who he wants to be, and what he wants to do, so he's not quite certain of who he is and what his actions are going to be at any step. He's very much being forced with he's definitely being presented with choices, and every choice he makes could send him down one path or the other. And he's very conscious of that. But it's also written in third person, and we don't get to hear all of Loki's internal monologues. We get some of them, but he's definitely keeping some things from us as a reader. So I like still getting to know Loki better, but still not knowing what Loki's going to do. And there's still this unpredictability of his character, which is one of my favorite things about Loki, is that he could be and do anything. Loki is also pansexual and gender fluid in this novel, although we mostly hear him talking about it rather than actually doing anything about it. So Loki mostly presents as male throughout this novel. He talks about maybe being able to shapeshift and be a woman, I think, and he definitely has a penchant. He definitely has a preference towards like women's high-heeled boots. So for as much as the novel was being advertised as like, hey, Loki's pan and Loki's gender fluid, it's kind of just more mentioned casually. What's more interesting is that Theo is definitely gay. So Theo and Loki are definitely having conversations about these topics. So it's more of a talking about it thing. He and Loki are having these theological discussions, these comparing what life is like on Earth and Asgard. So we have more of them talking about the sexual orientation stuff and gender fluidity than actually seeing it. Theo is gay, and we definitely get that impression that he likes Loki. But it takes so long for Loki to decide that maybe he likes Theo too, that it's such a minor part of this book, and it kind of just feels like it's there to have representation than it being a true part of Loki's character. Or at least, I don't know that he really likes Theo that much, because he also has feelings for Amora, and they're much stronger and much more explored. Not that that can't be a thing, when you can't be more attracted to one person than another. Obviously that happens, but the Theo-Loki relationship felt more forced. But I did enjoy them like talking about it and comparing it. How it's much more accepted on Asgard, how it's not really a big deal, and then Theo really telling Loki, like, this is not accepted here, I am in danger, I have been jailed for this, this is serious, this is something I have to hide. One of my favorite parts about their conversations comparing Earth and Asgard, though, is they're trying to decide which one's better, And one of the arguments that Thor presents is that Earth has dogs, and he asks Loki if they have dogs on Asgard, and he's like, I don't know what those are, so I guess not. And Thor's like, well, clearly we win because we have dogs. And, I mean, can you really come up with a better argument than Earth has dogs to being the superior planet? I will say that it takes a while to get to Earth. It took to about page 136 there, out of, like, all of this, before he finally gets to Earth. So all of this is like, this is him on Asgard and having experiences on Asgard, which I enjoyed that part of it. I enjoyed Loki, and I enjoyed getting to see more of his relationship with Thor, and more of his family life, and more of just being on a different planet. But it's so, the advertising of this presented as like, hey, he's going to go to Earth and solve these mysteries, and then it took so long to get there that seemed a bit off. I gotta say, the like, hype for this book didn't quite match. Definitely, like, hyping parts that were less of a deal in this book than they ended up being, I guess. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The main problem being not that it's a good book, but that I have read Thor comics, and I have read Mackenzi Lee's other novels, A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtues, and A Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. And those are all way better, more entertaining, more fun stories. And so I was hoping that there would be more of a mix of that, of having like a lighthearted Loki. But he's not. Even in his teenage years, he's very serious, very dark, and very moody. He didn't suddenly become this dark character. Like, he's always had that in him. So it wasn't quite as much fun as I wanted it to be. And even Loki's not always as likable as I wanted him to be either. Because you're watching him make decisions that ultimately turn him into a villain, and there's a potential that he could be good, and just watching him make the wrong decision over and over again is also kind of hard as, like, a huge Loki fan. I am much more a fan of Loki in Thor Ragnarok the movie than I am of Loki in the first Thor movie. Like, I want Loki to have fun. I want Loki to enjoy having friendship and connections, and watching him push people away and make decisions that are going to isolate him and send him further away from everybody else also is, like, hard to watch. So, it got 4 stars for being, like, a solid read, and still, I love getting to see Asgard and exploring Loki's character more, but it also just wasn't as much fun as I was expecting. My expectations were too high for this novel to actually be able to give it the 5 stars. Let me know in the comments below if you've also read this book and what you thought of it. What are your favorite Loki stories, comics? Did you also enjoy Mackenzi Lee's other novels? I'm going to post links to related reviews down in the description below. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.